I never expected my life to be turned upside down overnight. A simple email, just a few short lines, shattered everything I had ever believed in. I'll keep the car for you since the loan is in your name. Oh, and don't call me, it's over between us. As I read those words, it felt like my heart was being squeezed. A terrible feeling rose in my chest, but I still stubbornly dialed my husband's number. The phone rang, then went silent. I called again, still the same. By the fifth call, I received a short message. Don't look for me. I was frozen. My name is Laura Bennett, 34 years old, an accountant at a law firm in Texas. 12 years ago, I thought I had married the right man. Ethan, my husband, had once been a warm, somewhat lazy man, but he knew how to make me feel safe. We have a son, Oliver, 9 years old, a bright and mature child beyond his years. Since the day we got married, I've been the one handling our finances. Ethan took on different jobs but never managed to keep one for long. Still, I never blamed him. I believed he just hadn't found the right job yet. For the past 3 years, Ethan seemed to have changed. He managed to hold down a stable job at a car distribution company. The pay wasn't great, but it was steady enough to give me peace of mind. I thought, maybe he had finally grown up. I was wrong. 2 months ago, Ethan suddenly became obsessed with the idea of enjoying life more. He said we had worked too hard and forgotten the most important thing, family memories. He started looking into buying a camper van so we could take weekend trips together. At first I refused. We had a mortgage to pay, Oliver's school fees, and countless other expenses. A nearly $50,000 camper van was the last thing we needed. But Ethan was persistent. Every day he painted vivid pictures of our future adventures, the three of us grilling under the sunset, Oliver happily riding his bike around the campsite, me reading a book by the fire. Ethan had a way of making everything sound perfect. In the end, I gave in. We found a $45,000 camper van, a huge expense but one that could be paid off in installments. Since Ethan's financial record didn't qualify, I took out the loan in my name. I thought we would pay it off together. What I didn't know was that Ethan had already planned to leave me. This morning when I woke up, Ethan had already left for work like usual. By the afternoon, while checking my work email, I saw a new message from him. A message that changed my entire life. Laura, I don't think we're right for each other anymore. I've found someone I truly love. I'm starting a new life with her. I'll be keeping the camper van since it's in your name. You can handle the payments. I'll send the divorce papers later. Don't call me. I was frozen as I read those words. Immediately I called him, no answer. I called his office. They told me Ethan had quit a week ago. My hands trembled as I rushed to the bedroom, yanked open the drawer. The divorce papers were gone. Ethan had left. No goodbye to his son, no hesitation, no remorse. And I was the one left to deal with everything. I had no idea how long I sat there, gripping my phone, eyes locked on the bank account balance. When I saw $43.25 on the screen, a wave of suffocating panic washed over me. It was all gone. Everything I had saved for years, every effort to build a stable future for this family, reduced to that number. And I had no idea what to do, except stare at the empty screen. Frantically, I scrolled through my transaction history. My stomach dropped as the withdrawals flashed before my eyes. $3,500, $4,800, $5,200, and finally $2,000. Ethan had drained every last cent without a trace. What had he done with the money? In that moment, the world around me faded into nothing but darkness. He didn't just take the car, he took everything I had, including the trust I had given him. And then I realized, it wasn't just money he had stolen, he had taken my sense of security. He had taken our future. I grabbed my phone and called the bank, desperately hoping for a way to fix this, but the cold response shattered that hope. It's a joint account, he had the right to withdraw. Ethan had used my trust against me, and now, there was nothing I could do. I checked the auto loan next. $750 per month. The first payment was due next week, but I had less than $50 in my account. No money to pay the loan, no car to sell, no way to reach Ethan. I stood up, my legs suddenly heavy, my vision blurred, my chest tightened. With just a few steps, I collapsed onto the floor. The crushing pain in my chest made it impossible to breathe. Everything around me faded to black. When I opened my eyes, my head throbbed. A bright white ceiling burned into my vision. The hospital. I tried to sit up, my body aching with exhaustion. A doctor stood beside my bed, looking at me with concern. "You're awake," he said. "You were severely exhausted. We ran some tests and found that you have a serious stomach ulcer. You need to rest more." I couldn't believe what I had just heard. A stomach ulcer? Years of relentless work, endless worries about my family had finally pushed me to this point. I sat there feeling utterly defeated. What was happening to my life? I was drowning in debt, unsure of how to pay it off, and now I was seriously ill. I tried to get up, but my body felt drained of all strength. I just wanted to go home. I needed to be with Oliver. What would my son do if I were stuck in this hospital? Lost in my chaotic thoughts, the door suddenly burst open. Oliver ran in, his wide eyes filled with worry. "Mom, are you okay?" I forced a tired smile, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't hide the pain inside me. Oliver wasn't a naive child. He had always been perceptive, always aware of the emotions around him. I tried to reassure him. "I'm just a little tired, sweetheart. You don't need to worry." But Oliver didn't believe me. He stared at me, his eyes full of doubt. "You're not lying, right? I know something's wrong." I couldn't hide the truth anymore. Oliver already knew. He had sensed the change in me, in our family, and I couldn't pretend any longer. But the last thing I wanted was for my son to carry this burden. "Do you know that your dad took all of our money?" I asked, my voice trembling. Oliver didn't say a word. He already knew. There was no need for further explanation. He simply nodded, his eyes never leaving mine. "I'll help you, Mom." His voice was steady, filled with quiet determination. "I can deliver newspapers, do small jobs, so you don't have to worry, and we'll get the camper van back from Dad." I stared at my son in shock. How was this possible? How could Oliver think of something like this at a time like this? "What are you saying?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Mom, don't you remember when you bought me a phone, we installed a GPS app so you could track me?" Oliver spoke like an expert. "We can use it to find Dad, too." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Oliver had come up with a way to track Ethan, a 9-year-old boy, intelligent, determined, and far more capable than I had ever realized. He held up his phone, pointing to the screen. "You can see Dad's location right now." I looked at the screen, and sure enough, Ethan was somewhere out there, a blinking dot on the map. Oliver had been tracking his father this whole time, and I had no idea. "You did this? How did you figure everything out?" I asked, feeling both surprised and proud. "I just had a hunch. And I'd been watching everything. Dad isn't going to get away, Mom. I'm going to help you get the camper van back. I'm going to help you take back what's ours." At that moment, I realized I wasn't alone. Ethan may have left, I may have lost everything, but I still had Oliver, and no one could take away the most important thing I had left: the resilience of a mother and the strength of a child's love. This time, I wouldn't let Ethan get away so easily. With my son by my side, I would take everything back. I sat in front of my computer, eyes locked on the blinking dot on the map. Ethan was on the move, and my car was still in his possession. Oliver sat beside me, his eyes gleaming with determination, focused as if he were strategizing for an important mission. "Where is he?" I asked, my voice trembling with anger. Oliver swiped his fingers across the screen, zooming in on the area where Ethan's location was displayed. "Near a campsite, about a 2-hour drive from here. I'm guessing he's enjoying a little getaway with his girlfriend." A surge of fury ignited inside me. Ethan had taken all my money, left me in debt, and now he was living it up with that woman while Oliver and I were drowning in despair. I clenched my fists, feeling like I couldn't sit still another second. "I'm taking the car back," I said firmly, without hesitation. "Not just the car," Oliver replied quickly. "We're going to make him pay." I turned to my son and saw a fierce determination in his eyes. Oliver wasn't just trying to reclaim what was ours. He wanted to teach Ethan a lesson. And for the first time since I had been betrayed, I felt like I could finally do something to set things right. Oliver and I spent the next hour mapping out our plan. He had already contacted the police reporting the stolen vehicle. I wasn't sure how they would react, but at least now they had a reason to put Ethan under their radar. At the same time, Oliver uncovered another critical piece of information: the full name and address of Lindsay Parker, Ethan's mistress. We found her social media account, where she was bragging about her camping trip with a brand new camper van. My anger flared as I scrolled through the photos, and then I saw it. A picture of Ethan, standing next to Lindsay, his arm wrapped around her waist, a satisfied smile on his face. "Mom, we're not just going after Ethan, we need to let her family know too," Oliver said firmly. I nodded in agreement. I searched for Lindsay's parents' contact information and dialed their number. "Hello, this is Laura Bennett. I need to talk to you about your daughter." At first, the woman on the other end sounded cautious, but as I explained that Lindsay was traveling with a married man, one who had stolen a camper van from his wife and child, the conversation grew tense. Then, I heard a deep voice, presumably Lindsay's father, speak up, his tone laced with anger. "We'll be there immediately." I didn't know what they planned to do, but I knew one thing. Lindsay wouldn't be enjoying her little getaway much longer. We got in the car and drove straight to the campsite. When we arrived, my heart pounded at the sight in front of me. Police cars were parked at the entrance, and a group of people had gathered around the camper van. Ethan stood frozen, his face pale as a ghost as he faced the officers. Next to him, Lindsay had her arms crossed, an annoyed expression on her face, clearly irritated that her vacation had been interrupted. I stepped forward, Oliver right behind me. "That camper van belongs to me," I told the officers. "The loan is in my name and I never gave my ex-husband permission to take it." Ethan spun around, his eyes wide with shock. "Laura, what are you doing here?" I folded my arms, my voice as cold as ice. "Taking back what's mine." The police instructed Ethan to hand over the keys. I saw the reluctance in his eyes, but he had no choice. Slowly he pulled the keys from his pocket and handed them to the officer. I took them in my hand, a wave of relief washing over me. Lindsay let out a mocking laugh. "You're being ridiculous. Ethan left you, so why are you still chasing after him?" Before I could respond, Oliver spoke up. "So, it's you, the woman who lured my dad away and then tossed my mom aside like she was nothing?" Lindsay raised an eyebrow at Oliver, clearly surprised that a child was interfering in this situation. "Your dad chose me, it's as simple as that." Oliver smiled, but there was no amusement in it. "Is that what you think? Because I believe you're the one who's been fooled." Lindsay froze. Ethan turned to Oliver as well, his face suddenly filled with unease. "What do you mean?" Lindsay asked, her voice unsteady. Oliver pulled out his phone, tapped a few buttons and held up the screen. It was a picture of Lindsay with another man. Her belly, visibly pregnant. "Lindsay, are you sure the baby you're carrying belongs to my dad?" Everything went silent. I watched as Lindsay's face went pale, her eyes blinking rapidly, scrambling for an excuse. Ethan took a step back, his mouth slightly open as if he had just been punched in the gut. No way." Oliver shrugged. "You started dating someone else before you even met my dad. I found old pictures of you. That baby can't be his." Lindsay stammered a few incoherent words before suddenly turning to Ethan. "Are you seriously going to believe him? He's just a kid." But Ethan wasn't listening to her anymore. His face was drained of color, his eyes filled with shock and betrayal. I watched the scene unfold, feeling a deep, satisfying sense of justice. Ethan had betrayed me, taken everything I had to chase after this woman. And now, he was the one being betrayed. The police instructed Ethan and Lindsay to leave the area. Before they did, Oliver turned back and looked at Ethan one last time. "You thought you got away, Dad, but no one ever escapes the consequences of their actions." I smiled at my son. This time I had reclaimed what was mine, and for the first time in his life Ethan knew what true loss felt like. Ethan stared at Lindsay as if he were seeing her for the first time. His face turned pale, his hands trembling as he clenched them into fists. The truth was undeniable, raw, and merciless. There was no room for excuses. He had abandoned his family to chase after this woman, only to realize that he was nothing more than a pawn in her game. I stood there, feeling a cold sense of satisfaction watching Ethan crumble. It wasn't because I wanted to see him suffer, but because I knew he was finally tasting the very pain he had inflicted on me. But unlike me, he had no one to turn to. No one would welcome him back when everything fell apart. Ethan whipped around to face me, his voice shaky. "Laura, I was wrong. I didn't know Lindsay was like this. I didn't know this would happen. I made a mistake. Please help me." I let out a quiet laugh. Exactly as I expected, when he thought he had everything, he discarded me without a second thought. But now that he had lost it all, he was crawling back, hoping I would take him in like before. I wasn't angry anymore. I just felt sorry for him. I spoke slowly, making sure every word was clear. You didn't just betray me. You stole all my money, buried me in debt, and abandoned your own son, and now you expect me to help you? Ethan stammered, trying to find words, but I no longer cared. I pulled out my phone and turned to the police officer nearby. I want to report a case of financial theft. Ethan Bennett withdrew all the money from our joint account, but that money was what I had saved before we got married. I also want to file a legal claim to ensure he repays every cent. The officer nodded and asked for evidence. I handed over the bank transaction records I had saved. Ethan turned pale, realizing that everything had completely shifted against him. He had assumed draining the joint account wouldn't have consequences, but he had forgotten one crucial fact. I was no longer his wife. And legally, my money was no longer his. Lindsay turned to her parents, pleading desperately, but Mr. and Mrs. Parker had no patience left for their daughter. Mrs. Parker's eyes were cold as she spoke. You have shamed us. We raised you to be better than this, and yet you went after another woman's husband. And on top of that, you lied to him too. From now on, don't call us your parents. Lindsay froze, stepping back as if she couldn't believe what she had just heard. But none of them looked at her again. Mrs. Parker then turned to me, her voice low. We apologize for what our daughter has done. We won't interfere anymore. She'll have to deal with the consequences of her own actions. With that, they turned and walked away, leaving their daughter behind in the mess she had created. Lindsay stood there, stunned for a moment, before suddenly snapping. She lunged at Ethan, pounding his chest. You idiot! This is all your fault. If you weren't such a failure, I wouldn't have lost my parents too. The police quickly intervened, restraining Lindsay before the situation escalated further. They instructed both Ethan and Lindsay to come to the station for questioning. I knew they wouldn't be arrested immediately, but Ethan wouldn't be escaping his financial responsibility. I had already filed a lawsuit against him, and I would take back every penny he stole from me. As everything came to an end, I looked over at Oliver. He stood there calmly, but his sharp eyes made it clear that he had seen through everything from the start. I placed a hand on his shoulder. We did it. Oliver gave me a small smile. He didn't say anything, but I knew he too felt a weight lifted off his shoulders. Ethan was no longer a dark cloud hanging over our lives. 1 month later, things finally started falling into place. I sold the camper van, paid off the loan, and for the first time in months, I could breathe without the weight of debt crushing me. As expected, Ethan had to take a job at a factory to repay what he owed me. Every month, a portion of his paycheck was automatically deducted and deposited into my account. A mild consequence compared to what he had done. Oliver had grown so much through all of this. He was no longer just a carefree boy. He took initiative around the house, helped me without being asked, and was more thoughtful than ever. I knew deep down my son had been hurt by his father's betrayal. But instead of letting it break him, Oliver used it as fuel to become stronger. And so did I. Ethan's betrayal had once crushed me, but now I knew I didn't need to look back anymore. I had my job, I had my son, and I had a new future ahead of me. One morning, as I was getting ready for work, Oliver sat beside me, his eyes bright. Mom, we should go camping this weekend. I raised an eyebrow. Are you serious? Oliver nodded. We don't need an expensive camper van to have fun, we just need each other. I smiled, feeling my heart soften. Maybe he was right. We had lost so much, but in the end, we had found what mattered most. We had found ourselves again. Laura Bennett's story is more than just a fight for justice, it's proof of the power of resilience and the strength of family. In life we all face betrayal and loss, but what truly matters is that we don't let ourselves drown in misery. Laura was pushed to the edge, but she refused to fall. She fought back and took back what was rightfully hers. Just like in real life, sometimes loss is an opportunity to rediscover ourselves. To become stronger, more determined, and ready to move forward. What do you think about Laura Bennett's story? What are your thoughts on betrayal, resilience, and overcoming hardships? Have you ever faced a similar situation or have a unique perspective on these characters? Share your thoughts. Don't forget to follow the channel for more compelling real-life stories.